Hi everyone, I'm Dina with Mills Family Gardening. We live in North Texas, Zone 8A. Today is February 11th and it's perfect time for us to plant onions here in the South. We're going to plant some short day onions. They're called 1015 Texas Super Sweet. Here in the South, short day onions grow the best. And we ordered these on Dixondale Farms website. I just want to give them some free advertisement because the onions arrived quickly, they were packaged nicely, and they look healthy. We're planting our onions about 6 weeks before the average last frost date here. About a week ago, I started working on the soil. I spread some mushroom compost, llama manure. Our soil is heavy clay, and I'm hoping that all that will amend the soil and make it fluffier and better for the onions to grow. A few days ago, we had a lot of rain, so the soil is soaked and moist, so I'm not going to water it. If it was completely dry, I would have watered it. But we're going to go ahead and plant our onions. There are two main rules about planting onions. Onions need to be planted shallow, so I'm going to put the stick on the ground and I'm just gonna go along the stick to keep the line straight. And I'm going to make a hole about 1/2 inch deep and put the onion in there and then put the soil around it. If the onion is planted deeper, then you can simply pull it up a little bit and then bring the soil all around it to support the onion, just like that. I'm going to space the onions about 6 inches, maybe a little more from each other in the row. So again, I'm going to make a hole, not very deep, and then bring the dirt around the onion so it would be supported. If you feel like the onion is too shallow, just make the hole a little deeper and put the onion in there. And the second rule about onions is that onions like a lot of water. So make sure not to let your onions go dry for an extended period of time. Make sure to water them regularly, especially during dry months of the season. I forgot to mention that I also spread some bone meal, some minerals in the soil, which is a very good feed for the onions. My next row will be about 1 foot from the first row, so I'm going to move my stick about 1 foot away from the previous row, and I'm just gonna plant the onions the same way, about 6 inches away from each other. Today is April 16th and our onions are growing well. They're starting to bulb up a little bit. I have not been doing much to them. We installed the drip irrigation that has been watering them the whole time. I also have not been fertilizing the onions. I guess all the manure and fertilizers that I added before I planted them is still working, so they're growing really well. All I have been doing for them so far is just pulling up some weeds here and there whenever I would walk by or have time for that. We are about 1.5 months away from harvesting them, so they're not ready to be harvested just yet. So we'll just let them keep growing and we'll come back when they're about ready to be harvested. Today is May 27th and we are ready to harvest onions. How do we know when the onions are ready to be harvested? First of all, the bulbs look big. Second of all, they develop brown papery skin. And third of all, the onion tops have fallen over. If the onion tops are still up, do not harvest those onions as they won't store well. Wait for the tops to fall over. One of our onions has bolted, and it can happen for a few reasons. It can be too hot, too cold, or not enough water for onions. When we planted those onions in late winter, I never covered them from frost or freezing temperatures, and they were fine. And in May, we had some hot days when the temperature would go up to 90 degrees Fahrenheit. And in those days, I made sure to give them extra water so they would stay hydrated. Having a drip irrigation has been a huge help in growing our onions because it provided them with a consistent supply of water and also deep watering. If I watered them just by the hose by hand, I'm sure more onions would have bolted. But because of drip irrigation, only 1 onion out of 97 that we planted has bolted. During their growing season, we fertilized our onions with liquid fish fertilizer and more bloom, and I believe that helped our onion bulbs get big. Harvesting onions is always fun for children, so our children are going to help us in harvesting them. are some damaged onions, I'm going to make sure to use them up faster because they will rot sooner. And I'm going to let the bolted onion keep flowering so that I can collect seeds from it, and I'll plant them this year again. If I had several bolted onions, I would try to use them up in cooking faster, or I would freeze or freeze dry them or can them because they're not going to store well. So now that we've harvested our onions, we're going to lay them in a single layer in a protected area. In our case, it will be a back porch. That place stays shaded and dry the whole time while onions are curing. And we'll keep our onions there for 3 or 4 weeks until their next completely dry out. Today is June 18th. It's been 3 weeks since we harvested our onions, and they've been curing on the back porch in complete shade and dry. So I made a mistake with onions while they were still in the ground. I kept watering them even though their tops already fell over. And because of that extra watering, some of them started rotting. Like you see these two, they're mushy and they don't smell good. And you can see some of the cover started rotting away. So I'm going to use these onions as soon as I can. I'm not going to store them. If you notice the tops of your onions fall over, then stop watering them and let them sit in the ground if you don't have time to harvest them yet. That way they're not gonna go rotten. But the majority of our onions are looking great. They've cured well. And if you come closer, you can see that their necks are completely dry, so that when I press here, there's nothing inside. They're all empty. So now we can simply remove the tops and then cut off the roots completely. Now that we remove the tops, we can see that the neck of this onion is completely dry. So they're ready to be stored long-term. For long-term storage, I'm going to use these mesh bags. They can be polyester, but we are using cotton ones, so we can reuse them year after year. And I'm simply going to put all the onions that I removed the tops and the roots from, I'm simply going to put them in this mesh bag. I can put several of them in there, and then I'll simply store them in our pantry, and they should store like this for about a couple of months. So it's pretty easy to grow onions if you follow certain steps. I hope this video encourages you to grow more onions in your garden. Thank you so much for watching this video, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.